Please don't crochet elastic into your ribbing. I've been seeing it everywhere lately. And look, I get it. I'm saying this as a friend because I've tried this one before with a stretchy elastic, but it ruined the way it felt. And this was on my scrap yarn hoodie, which became a pattern, so I had to find a real solution. So I went full crochet science mode. Months of testing, swatching. There's only one ribbing that really can make this work, and it's back loop only slip stitch ribbing. And I'm not gonna lie, it's a pain in the ass, but it's also kind of magical. It's sturdy, it stretches, and it actually does what you want your ribbing to do, which is gather something in around your body. So before you go ruining your cozy crochet piece with sticky elastic, try this instead. I'm going to show you how to do this back loop only ribbing using the cuff from the scrap yarn hoodie. Seeing something in its like functional use always helps me to be able to like remember it and understand why it works. And a waistband would take too long. I'm gonna use a 5mm hook, which is what you're using on the scrap yarn hoodie, and just a cotton size 4 worsted yarn because it looks good on camera. So we're gonna do a chain of 16. You're gonna skip that very first stitch and then begin our back loop only ribbing in the second stitch. So back loop in that top V of your crochet, it's gonna be the loop that's furthest away from me. And as we change sides, it's gonna keep being the loop that's furthest away. So a basic slip stitch, we're gonna go into that loop, like I said, that's furthest away from us, grab our yarn with our hook and then pull it through both loops, the loop that's front of our chain and then the loop that was on our hook. So we only have one loop left on our hook. It's a very simple slip stitch across this piece here really quick. Chain 1 to turn. Here's where it starts to get interesting. What we're used to with crochet is that you have like your main body stitch and on the top you have those little V's. But what this has done is it has actually created 2 sides of V's. So if I look at the side that's facing away from me, there's a row of V's, and if I look at the top, there's also a row of V's. Look for the V's on the top and then go into the loop that's furthest away from you, and then again what we'll do is that slip stitch only in the loop that's facing away from us. Chain 1 to turn. That last stitch sometimes can look a little bit suspect, so make sure you do go all the way across that last stitch, otherwise it'll just keep getting shorter. Back loop only slip stitch ribbing looks the most similar to knit ribbing. This basically creates those faux knit stitches on either side. Let's talk about the anatomy of the stitch. Why does the back loop only ribbing look the way it does? By going through this back loop, it means we aren't crocheting through that like faux V side, and therefore it just gets preserved and looks like you have done a knit stitch, but really it's just those 2 loops sitting on top of each other forming that faux V. So how much yarn am I actually adding in this direction every stitch? Well, you're pretty much getting 1 little strand of yarn in each direction versus we're used to doing like a little stack of stitches, and that's why this takes a million years to do. But also that back and forth creates an incredible amount of stretch in your ribbing, which also means recovery and holding its shape better, which should then make it so that you don't need to do something afterwards like the hack of putting elastic behind it. It makes it a lot easier if you relax your tension. How you're pulling through the loops will actually help your stretch be better versus if you're just like pulling it as tight as possible. Count as you're going. I know a lot of people like to count, myself included, because that's the only way I'm gonna know, oops, I missed that last stitch before I did the chain to turn. And remember, I said make sure you get a full 15, otherwise I'll start going like this, exactly like mine is. For some reason, I seem to find the stitch on this side, and on this side, I miss it. So make sure you're getting all of those loops. I would recommend that it sits on your wrist with just a teeny bit of stretch to it. Take a tape measure around your wrist. It's about 16 centimeters. So I want this to be 16 centimeters. We now have a completed piece of ribbing. So now we're going to seam the two sides together. It doesn't really matter which side is up since they should be even. We're just going to do a slip stitch through the top loop on either side. So kind of half of the stitch. Line up your ends, and then we are going to start seaming. So I'm already in that first stitch. Just pull through here is an easy way to start. And then I'm going to keep doing that all the way down. And then we will pull our tail through. We have a slip stitch seam there, but this is actually on the inside of the cuff, because what we're going to do is we're going to turn it to the other side, and then look, you can no longer see that seam. Great time to try it on. Make sure it fits nice and comfortably, isn't too tight, and that's perfect. Okay, so now that you've seen the technique, let's talk about how it actually behaves, because it kind of blew my mind. Does it only work with double-stranded yarn like this? Nope. The very first version of the cuffs were done in this very airy single-stranded Puno yarn, which has since stretched out almost to the point of not being wearable everywhere else except for the cuffs. That's when I knew that this ribbing was really something special. So I think naturally the question then is, if this ribbing is so great, why doesn't anybody use it? Well, you saw, it's so tedious. There's probably not a smaller stitch that you can do in crochet, and if you think of one, let me know, I'm curious. But that's exactly why it does work so well. And please believe me when I say the reasons I spent so long testing different ribbing is because I hated doing back loop only rib stitching so much. I was searching for anything else that would make this process faster, and it turns out the only way to make it faster is to just get used to it and get better at it. This truly is the only ribbing stitch in crochet that works this well. So it may be the slowest ribbing stitch in all of crochet, but it also might be the last one that you'll ever need to know. It's the most crucial part of making the scrap yarn hoodie work so well. It looks like a vintage quilt, and yet it feels like your favorite sweatshirt. And the secret is the ribbing. It allows the piece to then drape over the waistband and the cuff, which is really what gives it that incredible shape. So if you want to see this ribbing technique in action and try it out right away, the scrap yarn hoodie pattern is a great place to start. And you already know how to do the cuffs and the waistband. The pattern also comes with access to my crochet community, the Stitch Lab, which has a dedicated space for you and your fellow crocheters to work on your scrap yarn hoodies together, which also means real-time support for me as well in those spaces. You'll find a link for that below. Make sure you're subscribed on the channel. Have I convinced you that slip stitch ribbing is the solution, or are you still team just add elastic? Tell me in the comments. Either way, I hope you learned something and this challenged you to look at ribbing a little bit differently. I'm Leigh. Thank you so much for watching. Until I see you next time, happy crocheting.